first thing that they do, right? Whenever they hear the number, whenever they see the number, that's the first thing that they do. If you didn't know that, you need to know that now. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, okay? So you need to know that in their minds, whenever they see a number that's above .08, that's what they're locked in on. Tell them that, and be realistic about this. Whether or not you accept that at face value or not, you need to tell them that you do. And you need to know that. You need to believe it. Because quite honestly, I do that in real life. That's what I did. Before I started doing this job, if you're above .08 on that breath test slip, that was it. That's the way that real people view these things. And so you've got to start from that position and deal with it realistically during jury selection. That's what Carl Bettinger is talking about, okay? It's an exceptional book. Pick it up, read it tomorrow if you can. You've got to, and again, this is building upon that idea, you've got to have common ground, shared values with jurors. People are appalled whenever they sit through my jury selection because whenever I'm doing this, and you know how prosecutors ask that question about, has anyone here ever had a loved one or someone they cared about that was killed or hurt in a DUI accident? They always do this. They always get people thinking along those lines. And obviously the vast majority of our cases don't deal with those issues. People are shocked whenever they sit through it with me because whenever I was 17 years old, I was involved in an accident where I T-boned a person. That lady was under the influence of alcohol and cocaine and some other stuff, and I had my blood drawn with her. It's a reported case in the state of Georgia. I talked to jurors about that. I talked to jurors about how it affected me, and I talked to jurors about their experiences. And what I do whenever I do that is I let them know that I care about this every bit as much as everyone else in the courtroom. And I understand the gravity of that problem, and that I don't want to be here, and I don't want that problem to continue to occur. And everyone there will start to connect with you once they realize that you're a real person with real experiences and you're not trying to walk some drunk out of the courtroom today. All right? And that's important. It's as important as anything that you do during jury selection. Rule followers, they're definitely a catch-22 there, okay? And when I'm talking about rule followers, there's people who will say, yes, the police need to follow their training, their procedures, their processes in the administration of that test. Rule followers they're a tricky group of people. I mean, you got to watch these folks because, for example, a military person who is in the jury panel and they talk about, absolutely, you better follow your rules, you better follow the processes, you better follow the procedures. That person could also be the worst juror on your panel because, don't forget, your guy did take a risk that night by going out and drinking to get behind the wheel. So you got to know that just because they're rule followers doesn't necessarily mean that they're your ideal juror. So just be aware of that and be conscientious of it as you're going through selection because they can bite you just as much as they can help you there. And finally, during jury selection, you've got to get each of your jurors married to the idea that they are, in fact, going to hold the police officer in the state to following their rules and processes. Make sure you get them to vocalize that because you want to repeat it to them in your closing argument. You want to be able to say, do you remember whenever I stood up here at 8:30 this morning and the first thing that I asked you was, will you hold them to their processes? Will you hold them to their rules? Will you hold them to actually administering the test properly? And we all said yes. You need to be able to feed that back to them because once they then realize, I've actually promised that guy this morning that I would hold them to that process, once they make you that promise, they feel guilty about not doing it. I mean, you are guilting them into voting for you. It's just what I do. During your opening statement, you have to make sure that you let them know about your fear of the number, but be very, very detailed in your opening statement. I made this horrible mistake whenever I first started practicing, and that was that I was very nebulous in my opening statement. I wouldn't let the jurors know what my defense was. Hold on, just wait and see, that kind of thing. The reason why lawyers do that is because they don't know what their defense is, and they don't know what they're doing. If you're getting up there and I got friends who try very, very serious felony cases, and they'll say, let's just wait and see. That means that they don't have anything, okay? You have something here. You've got your documents. You've got them locked up on their timeline. You know that this defense is there. Lay it out to the jurors in voir dire. Lay it out to them in your opening statement. Lay it out to them in the evidentiary portion of the case, and lay it out to them in closing. I want to feed it to them as many times as I can as I'm going through that. If you do that, if you show that consistency with them, they'll reward you for it. Okay? So get over the fear of not telling jurors what your defense is. And that's a hard thing to do, particularly whenever you don't have an expert coming in and cleaning everything up for you. But if you don't show it to them early, it's like you're searching, and they can sense that. They know that about you, and you don't want to be searching. You've got a defense, and you know that it's developed. And if they want to run from their documents, if they want to try to play little games with times and that sort of thing, jurors will punish them for that. So let them do that. That's fine. If they want to play those little games, that's all right. You can deal with it. The cross-examination of the breath test operator in these cases, we probably all have done a breath test trial where you start asking the operator about what goes on internally in the machine and that sort of thing. I think that it's a complete and utter waste of time to do that if you're trying a mouth alcohol defense. You can ask them some simple questions about the slope detector and that type of stuff. They're not going to know anything about it. Then you spend the rest of your time on some very simple, short chapters. In the written materials, I gave you guys, I've literally just built and built and built on this defense. And it's as detailed of cross chapters as you will ever want for a mouth alcohol defense. They're all there. Everything that I use is there. Cut them out. You don't need to use them all. But there literally is just a list of questions there for mouth alcohol defense. And the chapters are broken down, okay? So if you decide, you know what, I want to try a case next week, and I hope that you will, if you decide to, you've got the chapters there that I think that you need for